I'm really delighted to have a very powerful and effective 10-word motto for life, and not just for life generally, but specifically covering the big four areas of mind, body, relationships, and prosperity. And I'd really love for you to have it too and benefit from it. A few months ago, it became obvious that Kissing Consciousness wanted to have its own motto, not for the sake of it, but because things were going that way. So here's the Kissing Consciousness motto, complete with a full explanation of how it works and how it came about. So here we go then, 10 words for life, the Kissing Consciousness motto. And as I said earlier, it covers mind, body, relationships, and prosperity. And I think that's a very important thing because my friend has a saying that when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. In other words, if you look at the world of personal development, self-help, or conscious living, whatever you want to call it, oftentimes you'll get people that will get one technique that works or that they're familiar with, and they sometimes wish to expand that to make it apply to every situation of life. But of course, it's not going to apply to every situation of life. A lot of things are different contexts. There's all kinds of things that happen in life. And one simple notion is unlikely to be able to cover all kinds of eventualities. At the same time, you don't want a really long motto that covered every single possibility that could arise in specific detail. Wouldn't be a motto, that would be a novel. And so here's something halfway in between, is to cover mind, body, relationships, and prosperity. First I want to explain though why it is that I focus on those four specifically, is rather than it being something that I just arbitrarily decided, it's actually something to do with the nature of reality. If we go back 20 years, I was in a philosophy group which was looking at the nature of reality, and they focused very heavily on the idea of positive beliefs or removing limiting beliefs. So their view of the world was that essentially everything is an expression of our beliefs. Now, while that has some benefit to it, one of the problems with that is it's too absolutistic. So I was getting great results from applying that in certain situations because it was really freeing to have a sense of not having any limiting beliefs and just, oh, that's just a belief, we can bypass that. There was a certain liberation to that. But at the same time, there was a problem with that, and two problems really. The first was that the subjective truth of our beliefs isn't the only truth around. There's also objective truths such as what we do with our bodies. I can have a subjective truth about my body all day long, but there's an objective truth there. There's an objective reality. If I weigh it, it's going to weigh a certain amount regardless of what I tell myself it's weighing, or if it's just a belief or something. That's obviously not something that can be just determined by beliefs. And the other part of that, the other problem with that was to do with relationships, because as well as subjective truth and objective truth, you also have intersubjective truth. So you have people who have ideas about how things are going to be. Well, the trouble with life is that sometimes other people have other ideas as well. They might not correspond to what we think we can just manifest reality and manifest our lives the way we want them to be. So whilst they were teaching that beliefs are everything and everything else that we see in the world is subservient to our belief systems and our mind, there's a reality there which Ken Wilber calls the big three, which is self, culture, and nature. And in personal development terms, we can think of those as the mind, the body, and relationships. Now, actually, if you look at his 4 quadrants, there are 4 rather than 3. And the way 3 becomes 4 is that you can simply separate the objective realms, the physical realms, between your individual body and the wider physical world. So often, well, in integral theory, this is largely considered to be social systems. In personal development terms, the way that manifests is, or the thing that's most relevant for us is prosperity. How are we doing interacting with society in a way that gets us money and prosperity in response, in reward for the contributions that we're making to society. If we're giving something out, are we receiving back that's going to allow us to prosper and live our lives effectively? So that's how you have the four quadrants. And this is also based on the same kind of reality that if you remember back to your school days, if you ever did French or languages, German, something like that, then you would have six different aspects in individual and collective in here and out there. So French verb être would be je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. Terrible pronunciation, no doubt. But the point is you've got six perspectives. I, we, I, you, he, she, it in the singular. And then in the plural you have we, you plural, and they. And there's a reason why you'll see these across all of the world's major languages, really, since the year dot, is because these represent perspectives of reality which are they're there, so they become part of our necessary language because they're part of our everyday lives. Again, the reason there's six rather than four is just another perspective between the out there. Are you talking about? Am I talking to you, which you'd be a you, or am I talking about you, in which case it would be he or she or they? So there's just a different perspective there. But essentially, the reason, therefore, you can see that we have mind-body relationships and prosperity isn't arbitrary. It's fundamental to the nature of reality. So now we have that in mind, we can get on with the motto and look at each part in turn and see what the motto is and why. So the first part of the motto relates to the mind, and it's the primary activity of holding presence. This is really the first thing that we can do in our minds to help our lives work effectively. And holding presence is about making sure that we respond consciously rather than reacting unconsciously to a situation, or perhaps even just to the contents of our minds in a given moment. If it's something that's bothering us, if we're feeling a bit turbulent, then rather than react, we want to be looking to respond, to become aware that there's an issue that we need to pay greater attention to, and then decide how we're going to consciously respond. And there's a great Deepak Chopra quote. He said, responsibility is the ability to have a creative response to a situation. So you can see there a binary table. Under the love consciousness column, we have respond or responding, and under the fear consciousness column, we have react or reacting. That's on page 160 of the Kissing Consciousness Handbook. And that also equates to, as I mentioned last week, choice and the illusion of choice. So holding presence is something that allows us to recognize when we're in fear consciousness. We can become aware of that so that we can essentially loosen that stranglehold of the fear consciousness that it has on us. So once we take perspectives of our thoughts or the situation, then we're no longer in the middle of the situation as a effect of it. We can take a perspective and become the cause of it by influencing it how we wish to, by perhaps deciding that something isn't for us, we don't want to be doing something, or just recognizing that perhaps we have some negative thoughts or some emotions that we're avoiding, and perhaps check in with those and see what's going on. That's going to allow us, in any situation really, that's going to allow us to completely change the perspective of what's going on from, as I say, from being the effect of negative thinking and situations to getting back in control and deciding what's true for us, what do you want to choose, how do you want to respond to the situation. So that's really invaluable, and that's why it's the first part of the motto. The second part of the motto is about the body, and this is all about listening to the body, which is something that my friend David Hurd taught to me about 20 years ago. I interviewed him on the subject of strength for life, and David's the trainer of elite international athletes with testimonials from people such as the England cricket captain Andrew Strauss, and he was also the founder of the National Rehabilitation Centre for the Paralysed, where I worked for him. And so he's got fantastic expertise across a number of areas to do with the body. And so let's hear him explaining it in his words about listening to the body.
People say about exercising in gym, how boring. I've never found that to be so, because I'm always intent on what is happening in my body, what are the changes that I'm making. There's so much information being provided that I don't even listen to the music that's on. People say, do you mind if we change the record? I don't even hear the record.
So this is like a car engine thing, where you
absolutely
get in the sense of what's going on.
Absolutely, you're getting a feel for what's going on, and this is what
because you're more attuned than most people. Is it something we should be developing?
Absolutely, and this is what I try to do to my athletes, and it's what I try to do to the people at the centre, is to get them to listen to their body. It's to get them to hear what's going on and respond to that. And it's actually fascinating, and not because it's my body, but because it's everybody's body.
Yeah.
There are things happening, and we can make a difference.
So there's David's own words explaining how we can listen to our bodies and how that can improve our situation for them and for our health. So what I found is that this is something that I can improve every day. This is, as I said, it was 20 years ago that I heard about this approach to body and health. And by simply living that practice, I noticed that every day, and certainly every month and every year, I'm developing my ability to listen to my body a lot better. And that just refines down even better every day, how effectively I can respond to what my body's asking for, what its needs are, what it wants, what it doesn't want, and therefore, in consequence to that, what the results are that I gain accordingly in health and vitality, various other things like that. So it's really very effective. But also, it can be effective if you're in moments that you're not sure about. You're making something that perhaps is making you nervous, or you've got some doubts about something, because as well as the gross level physical experience of the body, you can also pick up signals from your body, because the mind and body are so closely related. If your mind is not sure about something, you can sometimes feel it in your body as well. You can feel certainty, or when you feel good about something, and also when you feel doubt, or when you feel bad about something, or perhaps someone. So there's a wealth of information that you can gain from paying attention to the body in lots of different ways. The third part of the motto is about relationships, and the primary life skill with relationships is integrating boundaries. So this is a combination of what's true for you and what's true for the other person. So obviously the easy place for you to start is with what's true for you. So are you communicating? Are you sharing what your wishes and desires are with the other person so that they can respond to them? And are you willing to take their boundaries and requests on board for what's true for them, and what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with, how they want things to be? That doesn't mean that you have to do what they want, but it does mean that where things relate to their choice, that you accommodate that and integrate their choice with your choice. Now, it might be that people can't agree on what that's going to be because they have different desires, in which case there is no healthy relationship. It's just two people who want different things. But where people do want the same thing, or where they're happy to have some overlap between their truths and their boundaries, then you have relationship, and the integration and honouring of the boundaries on both sides is what brings harmony in a relationship. There really is nothing else to it. It's nothing any more complicated than that. So integrating boundaries is the key to it. Something we do to help people train with that, you may have seen, is the boundaries exercise. Now you can see here I'm demonstrating this exercise with Fiona Cutt, something we did together. We presented a session at a seminar in 2015. And what we're doing here is demonstrating a exercise where one person is able to give signs to the other person as to whether they're comfortable, whether they're happy for them to come any closer or not. So hands up in front of the body means please don't come any closer, and hands down below means you're welcome to come any closer. You're welcome to come closer. And therefore you can see the other person is able to respond to that. They can decide for themselves in the moments when the hands are down by the side saying you're welcome to come closer. The other person can decide whether they want to, or whether they simply want to stay where they are. And Just as a car engine, if you drive a car, you'll know that between the accelerator and the clutch, you can find a biting point. Well, this is that great part, this great moment of truth between two people, where you can find it's like the biting point. It's like the overlap of truth between two people, where they're integrating boundaries in this way, and the boundaries exercise is a particularly powerful way for people to get a feel for that. Once you've got a sense of that, you can then also take that into the wider world of not simply standing in front of people and walking towards them, but in all kinds of other ways about what you're happy with, what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to, what you're being a part of, what you don't wish to have anything to do with. And then you can, of course, check in with yourselves about whether you're communicating that effectively and whether you're also hearing that from other people so that you're able to cater to their boundaries. And as I say, that's going to bring harmony in relationships in a way that nothing else can. And finally, the fourth part of the motto is the prosperity part. And the primary life skill for prosperity is about contributing value. Are you adding value to society? Because without that, there's not really any reason to believe that society is going to be giving back to you any kind of wealth or prosperity in response to that, so that you can use it to live your life. So adding value or contributing value is perhaps the wider term that we can use, is key to this. And the way we approach this is to think, what is it that you have inside of you? What potentials, what abilities or skills or interests do you have that you'd like to get out there and contribute to the wider world? And how are you going to make that happen, really? What's the most effective way for you to do that? And the more you focus on your skills and your interests, the more you're going to be tapping into your powers and your abilities and your creative capacities to make a difference in the world. And that typically will be more effectively reflected back to you in your prosperity. Graham Cochran has a great saying. He talks about the idea of giving back, and actually what he realizes that in his world, in his activity of content marketing, he's giving first all the time. So it's not like, what are you going to give back in response to prosperity? Very often it's a case that if you have to give something first before you can even be noticed or be registered by society for something to be having an effect. So a consequence of that is that often there's a lag time for success between the moment when we're developing skills and giving something to the wider society and the point at which we receive reward for that, which can come a long way down the line. In the case of me writing a book, it came 4 years down the line, so that's quite an extreme example. But even with a lot of other projects that you might be undertaking, it's quite typical that you're going to have to be giving to society first in order for some gain of prosperity to come to you down the back end a few weeks or months later. That's quite a typical way that things work. So there we have it, contributing value. What is it that you aren't quite getting out or giving to the world that you would love to be doing? What's your passion? What's your interest? What are you going to be most effectively engaged in doing in order to A, enjoy contributing that because it's of interest to you, and B, enjoy receiving the rewards that come with contributing to society? So there we have it, 10 words for life, the Kissing Consciousness motto based on mind, body, relationships and prosperity. The part of that relates to the mind is about holding presence. The part that relates to the body is listening to your body. The part that relates to relationships is integrating boundaries. And the part that relates to prosperity is adding or contributing value. So then we have the motto in its entirety, which is hold presence, listen to your body, integrate boundaries, and contribute value. And those 10 words, those 4 aspects, are going to be able to guide and support and nurture your life at every turn. So whenever there's something that's challenging you, either there's a problem and you're feeling unsure about what's going on, or even if you just like to have more of life, be more enjoyable, have more of it come to you, you can always check in and see which of those 4 does this moment relate to. If it's something, a problem or an issue with your relationships, first thing you can ask yourself is there integration of boundaries going on? Are you integrating your boundaries with other people? Maybe you're not speaking up and saying what your boundaries are, or maybe there's somebody who is unwilling to honour your boundaries, in which case you might want to become aware of that pretty quickly so you can take an appropriate response, perhaps have nothing to do with them if they're not willing to respect your boundaries. If it's something to do with prosperity, are you contributing enough to society, or is the way you're being rewarded for that contribution not sufficient, not based on fairness or justness? Maybe if that's the case, then you need to look for some other way to receive that reward or response to what you're contributing. Is it something to do with the body? Oftentimes, if we don't listen to our body, then we develop symptoms, because essentially that's what disease is. We have signals from the body of how it wants to be treated. We ignore that, then the signals become louder, they become symptoms. If we keep ignoring that, then they become louder symptoms, and eventually, if we ignore them for long enough, they can become full-blown diseases. So listening to the body and giving it what it needs is the primary way to get that back into some kind of good state. Now, of course, with a big topic like that, there's not going to be any kind of guarantees, but primarily and for the large parts, that's a great way to go. And tying all of those up in almost any situation is going to be holding presence, because you're going to notice when something is not feeling quite right, and then the ability to notice that rather than just keep unconsciously doing what you were doing, the ability to pull out, metaphorically speaking, you take a step back, take a perspective, and see what's going on, see how you want to respond. That's going to allow you to, as I say, it's going to allow you to respond. And you might find that with the other 3 situations of the body, relationships, and prosperity, this quality of holding presence is an ever present. It comes in all the time, because your mind is essentially the control center, or a large part of what's happening in your life. So I hope that's helpful for you. And if it is, and you'd like to share your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you find that you're able to apply some or all of it to your life, and I'm sure it really should support, nurture, and guide everything you do in life, because it's such a comprehensive coverall for those 4 areas. So yeah, it'd be great to hear from you. And something that also may help you is my free guide to the top 10 life skills for an amazing life. And this also covers the 4 areas that we've talked about today. So that's mind, body, relationships, and prosperity. And we've covered the top 4 life skills for each of those. But for each of those areas, there's also a kicker life skill, kind of like if you have a superhero, you have a sidekick. So for example, with the body, the primary life skill is listening to the body, but there's also a secondary life skill that goes along with that. Similarly for relationships, for the mind, and for prosperity. So add another 2 in and you get 10 life skills. These are what I've identified as the 10 most important life skills that we can have. And as I say, you can get that for free. That's at kissingconsciousness.com/top10. You'll be able to see the link below. And also, if you're interested, you can also get one-to-one support from me, direct personal coaching. If you have an interest in that, you can get more information about that at kissingconsciousness.com/coaching. Thanks for the likes and subscribes, and I'll see you again.